Hello, everyone. Today is September 22nd, 2021. This is the Kubernetes Data Protection Working Group meeting. Today, we have one main theme in the agenda, which is the CVT design discussion. So Fang, I think you can get started. I already make you the co-host. So
okay. Thank you.
You can
Thank you.
share.
Okay, let me start sharing my. Let me start sharing my screen. So last time we met, we were discussing about making the CVT, the different snapshots, as a CSI service. Otherwise, it should be like a private for each company, right? So I dig into that CSI service a little bit more, and I can see that so far we only discussed about almost like one half of the component. So I want to bring it out here so we can discuss in more detail. So there are two halves of the first half is we have been talking about that a lot, is the change on the CSI drive to add this service. So each storage vendor, if they want to add this service into their CSI drive, they can implement this differential snapshot service on their CSI drive. And the API right now is just have one, which is get chain block, and then the response would be the chain block response that we have been discussed in the last few sessions that we met.
So should this be a separate service in CSI, or should this be part of the controller service? Right now, this is all controller part.
I look into so right now, if a CSI drive, a vendor provides CSI driver, they implement these three interface, right? The identity, the controller, and
right. So Snapshot is in the controller. So I wonder if this should be actually part of the controller. It's just
I wonder if we can enhance this controller service by adding a
the controller. There are many controllers. It's not like just one controller. Snapshot has a controller, and there's for PVC there are several controllers. Resize is the controller, right? So it's not like you have this one controller. You can only. Oh, you are talking about? Are you talking about from the CSI driver side? From CSI driver side, that's together.
I'm talking about the CSI
driver side, right? So CSI
side, yeah. This one is for the CSI driver, right?
So yeah, so if we want to make this like a separate CSI driver side, if you want to make this like a separate pod or something, then then that needs to be a separate one. So
I was going to mention that everything in the CSI RPC today, at least if it's part of the controller, the only thing that can consume those RPCs are things running in the same pod, which today is like all of the sidecars. So like, unless we're planning on like writing a sidecar that consumes this, it doesn't make sense to put it in that API. Like maybe a separate pod, a separate service starts to make more sense. But I still really want to understand, what is the client for this service? What does it look like? Where does it run? Who writes it? All of those things.
Yeah, that part is not. I think that part is not sorted out yet. I think we still need to talk about that.
Yeah, that's why at the beginning I say that we have two halves, right? This one is only half of it, right? The vendor, the storage vendor providing this as part of their CSI drive package. They implement this service, right? And then the API to talk to this service we've been discussing before. And when the vendor create that, support that service, then they would, in the get plugin capability, they would have to put this differential snapshot service along with other services that respond to this get plugin capability, right? So that is the first half of the problem that of the structure that we're trying to create here. And this, so I think I put all the material that we have discussed on the related to this API in this document, but this is not complete yet, because now we need to talk about the second half, right? How can we form a backup vendor, right? From backup vendor one point of view, if we want to use this service, how can I talk to this this service that we added here from the vendor, right? So I was looking at the CSI, the sample for the CSI architectures, right? And I think that we might have to enhance the Kubernetes control, the Kubernetes snapshot controller to, or maybe some components.
You can have a different control. Don't have to use the same controller, but so that we can decide later. So it can be a separate controller if we'll see what makes sense.
Yeah, but that is what I'm thinking, that we need to enhance.
So this does this also, does this need like a common controller part and a sidecar part? That I think we have not even figured out that yet.
Yeah, that's why
we probably need to look at the overall flow first.
Yeah, and we need to think all the way back to the client of these APIs who's creating snapshots and doing things with snapshots. How do they figure out what they can and can't do? Like if you have a system where there's multiple CSI drivers, some of which can do this and some of which can't do this, how do you find out if it's even possible on a given snapshot to consume the service? You have to think through what,
right? The CSI has the capabilities. You could
right, but like the consumer of the API doesn't know if it's going to work or not, right? Like they create a snapshot object and they may or may not get a snapshot, and then that snapshot may or may not be able to support these, diffing APIs. You might just get a snapshot that doesn't support it, and then what do they do?
They need to, yeah. So in that case, we'll have to do full backups then, right? If so, they check the capability. If it's for this, but we have not decided whether this is just.
But they're not talking. That user's not talking to the RPC. They're talking to the Kubernetes API, and there are no capabilities in the Kubernetes API, really.
So I think we also need to have a sidecar, right? So the same thing.
I think that's a very good question that we like, starting from the user of this service, right? Who we're going to talk to, right?
We can probably think about like, what do you do today with the snapshot capabilities? Do you actually check those? The backup software always assume that you can successfully create a snapshot whenever you request it? Is that what you do? Do you actually check capabilities? I guess that's the one.
Yeah, if I create a volume snapshot from the client point of view, I continue checking on the volume snapshot object until
you basically just check if it's successful or not. You check in but not really checking the capability. Okay.
There's a Kubernetes, there's a controller that external.
Okay, the sidecar
who have to act on this creation.
So it's possible that you are not really getting the snapshot back, even though you request it, right? Basically.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Then that'll be
a CSI plugin might not even include the sidecar if they don't have support for snapshots. They definitely would not create a volume snapshot class.
Right, if snapshot is not even supported, then this one should not be there. Right? I don't think we want to support this without snapshot. And what's the point?
So the problem that we have right now is that for volume snapshot, we have a Kubernetes object for it. Service we don't.
Right. Well, that's the thing. That's why. Last time we were talking about it, I think we actually still have it. That's why I was saying that I think Shanchen, unfortunately, he's not here. He brought up this API extension server. I think we can look into that. I think the reason that we are saying we don't want it is because there are concerns regarding performance. But I think we should look at this API extension and the server and see what we can do with that. Because otherwise, I mean, if we can't even consume it from Kubernetes, then do we really? Is this really?
Could you tell me a little bit more about that API extension server? Because that the concern that we have, the CR, the object that we create will be too large, especially in too large.
So Xing, you have a separate server. I guess you have a separate server. I mean, not separate, it's like extension. So it's like, I don't know the details of that. So I'm hoping that Shantan is not here, but maybe now you can take a look of this offline. I don't know if anyone else on this call know more about that.
I think the way that API extensions work is that basically Kubernetes delegates all of the REST API for some resource to a separate HTTP server. So Kube API server isn't even handling those requests, and that would definitely help with like performance issues around, you know, just the raw talking to the storage driver and getting like the list of blocks. Like if that's a lot of data, yeah, you want that to be consumed efficiently. That's very important. But there's a concern that comes even before that, which is just how does the user of the Kubernetes API like know on a per volume basis or a per snapshot basis what to talk to or where to talk to it? Because we've designed CSI to allow multiple CSI drivers to sit side by side, and users typically don't know that, right? They just have a bunch of storage classes and snapshot classes, and that, you know, typically you just create PVCs and create snapshots and expect something to happen. But here's a situation where like something might not happen. You know, you might get a snapshot that you can't do anything with, and so we have to answer that question first of like, how do you even get started with you know, creating a snapshot, figuring out that you can do this. And then once you know that, then yeah, of course, maybe an API extension that gives you all the actual change blocks is the most efficient way to deliver that.
Yeah, we could also add something in the CSI driver spec. So that's you know, some of those.
So when I create a volume snapshot object, for example, right, I have to specify who is the snapshot, right? And Kubernetes.
Yeah, I was just saying that for volume snapshot, you have the same problem today, right? I'm just saying.
Yeah. So should we enhance the API to, instead of just specify the volume name, we also by the snapshot or whoever will going to act on this differential snapshot service, like a vendor or something like that? Can we somehow?
Snapshot classes have a driver name in them, and so if you have multiple CSI drivers and one of them can do snapshots and one of them can't do snapshots, you would only expect to see a snapshot class for the one that can, and you would know which one it was by looking at the volume snapshot class. One could imagine like some top level field on the volume snapshot class which says supports diff APIs or whatever you want to call it, right? And then you could, when you created the volume snapshot class, if you supported it, you would have to assert that fact, and then maybe the rest of the stuff only works if that field is set on the volume snapshot class. All snapshots of that class would then be assumed to support this feature.
No, it's not here. It's not here. It's the snapshot class.
Oh, snapshot. I mean,
not in the CSI call itself.
Yeah.
So I think this is a larger general problem that perhaps we need to find a way to actually expose the CSI capabilities through Kubernetes somehow, right? Like expose them in the CSI driver object or something like that, because this is an issue with like volume cloning, and there is no snapshot class for that.
We do have the same problem with other capabilities. So we do use CSI driver to solve some of those problems, but there are still, you know, other capabilities that we're not really.
What exactly happens if you try to clone a volume that can't support cloning? Do you get a useful error message?
It's going to retry, I guess.
No, I mean, does it at least generate an event that tells you why it's not binding?
No,
I've never tried that.
The event should have something, right? The PVC have anything, or at least P or PV have any event telling you that? Well, there should be something. Well, at least it's in the logs. I'm pretty sure it's in the logs. Using logs, we check the capabilities.
When we create a volume snapshot, we do specify the volume snapshot class name, and then the controller will, based on this volume snapshot class name, to look up the volume snapshotter to perform the snapshot, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, can we do similar thing here? Can we, when we create?
So yeah, it's actually the same problem, Ben. This is not a new problem. Even if you also, if you think about resize, right? So even we actually have that like allow volume expansion, but what if a user uses the wrong storage class that, you know, it's actually not really, this driver actually does not really support it, and you still get this problem. It's going to
yeah,
right?
You're right. The problem of not supporting it at all is a long-standing one that we need to do something about. But I'm more worried about the case where you have two different ones that both do support it, and so you have two copies of the service. Like in that situation, API extension is
You say
not
what,
what
like
you
one?
want.
What do you mean two copies in one driver?
Right.
Yeah, does not.
No, I could have two different CSI drivers that both support
Okay.
the snapshot diffing feature, and so
Okay.
there's going to be two copies of the driver running, two copies of the HTTP server that front ends that. You know, there's going to be two copies
so
of
you're
everything.
saying it's going to send the request to both? What do you mean? It's not because it's.
No, I'm saying you have to know which is which, right? Like if
there might be a mapper, service mapper somewhere, right? Along the data path, there must be a central place where.
Right, and
so
for everything in CSI so far.
Then, so then if we have that in the snapshot class, we add some entry then.
Yeah, no, I'm saying for everything we've done so far, we have sidecars, we have built into the Kubernetes API, everything we need to figure this out. I'm saying the moment you go for like an API extension, you create a bunch of new problems.
I'm not familiar with how API extension works. You're saying that we don't have a way to figure that out?
Well, the API extension itself might need a multiplexer to support multiple CSI drivers.
Okay.
On its back end,
and
I don't know what
that's like some open issue that in phone. Can you write that down? I think those are the issues we need to look into. If we use API extension, how we can resolve this? Maybe we'll add a lot of complexity to that API extension server.
Yeah, it sounds like we need a multiplexer to directing the service request to the specific CSI drive that's supporting that snapshot, this differential snapshot, right? For that specific volume. Because for each volume, when you create a snapshot for it, that volume and the snapshot belong to some storage vendor on the storage end, right? And that's only the storage vendor that CSI drive is the one that actually will have to do the differential snapshot. So if we have a way to direct the volume snapshot to that drive, then the same way we're going to direct this differential snapshot toward that CSI drive. That is the what we need. What we right now, what we don't have is a set like a front end service or something like that to do the service instead of listening to the creation of the Kubernetes objects, right? Right now, for the volume snapshot, it have a controller, the external snapshot controller that listen to this volume snapshot creation. But in our case, this is a service. There's no object created to it. Or should we create an object for this and directed it to the external, the API extension server? What do you guys think?
Well, the same server should also be able to handle those API objects, right? Otherwise, what does it do? I mean, I would thought it has to handle those API objects. But that's the thing. I've never used it, so I'm not really sure how that works. So Ben, if you
I'm sure there's a way to do it. I see a deployment challenge with the way CSI drivers are packaged today. Your vendor has a bunch of YAML that you run that spins up some pods and some daemon sets, and and away, and voila, you have a CSI driver. But this is the deployment
Hey,
is going to be more complicated.
Fang, can you go back to that that diagram, deployment diagram of the CSI driver? So the extension server will be like talking to the Cube API servers on the right-hand side, right? So like I'm just
it would be a whole other pod, and it would need its own connection to the CSI driver somehow.
Right, but I think, but I would think your, let's say this is well, let's say we have a stateful set of deployment of something that will still be, I mean, that should still work the same way as before. I would assume. It's just you have this you have this other server, right? That server will be communicating with the
right. I don't think if we go an API extension route, I don't think you can have two of them. You only have one, which means if you have two CSI drivers, you need some multiplexer to stand in front of them.
Like a map between the server.
I haven't thought through all the details. I think it's going to look a little different than what we've done before. So it makes sense to like prototype it and show a way that we could do it.
So I could imagine a prototype where we have a CSI spec extension that generates the diff and a sidecar that maybe calls that, but then the question is how to connect the backup software to the sidecar.
Yes.
You could sort of push that problem into the backup software, but that would not be too friendly in the sense that it would have to figure out what CSI driver it's looking at, and then figure out how it's deployed and where that service might be packaged with its controller. It'd be a little messy.
And there's security implications.
I think we still need to have the sidecar controller.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I'm saying. The sidecar controller would be packaged with the driver and call the CSI extension, but then how does the backup software talk to it? But what's the security problem, Ben?
That I don't know.
I mean, just that today controller pods don't listen for HTTP calls.
Right.
Typically, because they're typically run on sensitive nodes because they have sensitive information, and you don't want them to get hacked. And so by creating a new sidecar that listens, you're creating an attack vector right into a sensitive piece of software.
Agreed.
Excuse me, I have a question. Possibly not understanding everything that's going on. So given that this interface we're talking about is exposed through sort of a gRPC connection rather than like a standard Kubernetes API, what if we solved the complexity problem? Could we write, say, a Go library that would basically solve all the things that Thomas was talking about, like locating the CSI driver container and opening up a connection to it and verifying that it has, snapshot diff capability?
Yeah, I would think you could. You could write a Go client library, and you would have to have certificates to do the TLS validation to solve the security problem that were known between the backup software and the sidecar and the driver that handles this.
That security concern is valid, but I think we have to figure out the flow first, right? The data flow between component, what component to be involved first, and then we will look into detail on the security.
Yeah, I think the important thing to bear in mind is in a world where you could have two CSI drivers in the same cluster, how is it going to work? Something needs to multiplex the calls, or there needs to be a way to find the service for a particular snapshot.
Yep, that is the.
So how do you handle this today? Let's say without this. I think you also know that part, right?
Yeah. So like let's just say VMware, right? VMware. I just make a call to the vSphere to get me the difference with the CPT between the two snapshot, right?
So you basically already
It's
know
private,
the
that's a
provider.
private call. I have to know that. I need to know where's the address of that vSphere service and so on, connection credential, and so forth. I just make a private connection there. For this
So
one,
how do you decide? I mean, so if there are multiple CSI drivers, how do you know which one is like? Do you just look at the snapshot class to decide, or how do you basically? So you need to actually make calls to the provider APIs, right?
yeah, yeah.
So you basically just look at. You actually need to know which one is which. So
yeah, that's part of the configuration when we create the
configuration. You use that one, so it's already pre-configured.
Yeah.
So it's not like dynamically decide based on the snapshot class or something.
Well, when we run a backup, right? The caller, the caller of my service will providing me that information how to connect into that vSphere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask a more fundamental question? So, I mean, before we delve into implementation details, like, API extension, CSI, security, all these things, I want to know what problem we're solving. Like, if the problem we're solving is basically, so I think that I can talk more in terms of how NetApp does things, but I would like to hear what other vendors are doing in this space. So as far as like what NetApp is doing, you have like a data replication engine, which is, our SnapMirror APIs, which we are used to move data incrementally efficiently from, A to B. And we also have a difference engine that's called SnapDiff. It's only for NAS, it's not for block. I understand this proposal is only for block, but it basically gives you a diff of different files between two snapshots, right? So as far as like the efficient and incremental backup, our SnapMirror APIs, which are the data replication APIs, they do the right thing behind the scenes. So there is no need to expose the different blocks to anyone else, right? So efficiently, we can back up data from point A to point B and only copy the DRD data. So that's one capability that we have. I don't know about other vendors. But the second thing, which is about the difference engine, like the main use of that is to build a backup catalog, right? So for example, this file and that file changed between these two snapshots. And that catalog can be used, for example, to do selective restore, right? So this kind of makes sense in the case of, NAS, but I don't know how that information is going to be used for SAN and block protocols. Like so basically I want to know there are two things, like especially I direct this to Fong about the VMware integration. Like right now, outside of Kubernetes, how are you integrating with different vendors and for what use cases? Like, is it mainly for efficient backup, or is it like from point A to point B, or is it more for like building a catalog? Like, which vendors, like, is it only like the system that you have in place? Is it only for vSAN, or are you integrating with other vendors? Like, I want to know more about the use case. Does that make sense?
We've seen this mostly for efficiency. The other approach to take like block backups is to do, we call it differential, meaning you have to scan the entire file system first, or file system or volume device first, and then find things that have changed, using like a dedupe kind of engine, which is really, really slow on backup because you have to read everything. If you have APIs that tell you what changed, you can back up only the things that have changed.
So my question is, if let's say vendor A has an API for backup that already does the right thing by only setting the dirty data, is there a need to expose the dirty blocks to true CSI? Like maybe we should focus on just having a backup API that, hopefully does the right thing behind the scene. I understand that it may not be supported by all vendors, but that's a different route, or that's a different alternative you can take.
Are you asking the difference between data path APIs and like the control plane APIs, where you say take a backup, you configure that your storage system with a data sync, and then it automatically.
Look, I don't know too much about other vendors, and I'm not the backup expert, but I'm just asking, like if a vendor has a backup API and it already sends the incremental dirty data, is there a need to expose the dirty blocks through CSI, through some other mechanism to outside, if the vendor's API already does the right thing?
So Adela, I think this is for backup vendors who want to support different storage systems.
Right,
in your case,
and they already do that,
yeah.
like they already do that.
Right, but they have to go call
outside of Kubernetes. So,
right, but they have to go call different vendors APIs, right? So here we are trying to come up with a common API. That's the goal here, right? So of course, if you only support one storage system, I guess there's no need. But here, backup vendor want to be able to back up volumes created by different storage systems. So if we don't have this, then they just have to go use storage providers individual APIs, right? So make
right, and they're already doing that, like for all the use cases.
But that's just not efficient, right? So that's what we're talking about. That's not efficient. We want this same as CSI. Why do we need a CSI at all, right? You can already do that. You just call each vendor's API. It's the same reason, actually.
No, I think there is a difference here. The difference is that, let's say, if I have a data replication API that already sends blocks efficiently from point A to point B. Okay, so I just say, back up this volume. That's the API. And the backup vendors can call that API through CSI. They don't necessarily have to know about the change blocks. They just call that API and the right things happen behind the scene by the vendor. So I'm not basically saying we shouldn't support backup through CSI. I'm saying we should, but maybe the use case for having an API for change blocks is less compelling.
You are basically saying like it's just
based on what vendors support.
You're basically saying like every time you just do a so that has to be like incremental every time, right? So because otherwise, how do you know what is, because here we're talking about two snapshots, one snap, the diffs between two. So if you want to do this one automatically, then that will be always incremental, I guess. Right? This is like, is that what you mean? Did I get that right?
So, I mean, part of the goal with this is to improve, incremental backup snapshots, right? Incremental backups, right?
So I can answer your question in the way that I understand, right? Right now, for example, in my backup vendor, right? I can back up from VMware first class disk, and also back up from a bunch of CSI drive, right? And in order for me to make it efficient backup, I have to talk to VMware vSphere with using their own protocol. And for CSI right now, for other vendor, that's the CSI vendor that I want to make an efficient backup. There's no way for me to do that unless I have to dig out what is the vendor is doing, and I have to call that API for each of the vendor. For example, if in my cluster that I'm backing up, there's 5 different vendors, then I would have to call VMware vendor API and other and I have to add incrementally adding the support for these vendors API into my backup software. That makes my backup software very complicated. And so instead of doing that, the proposal here is that can we have a common way that I can make a differential snapshot instead of calling individual API to get a snap diff? Can I, as a backup vendor, just call CSI's differential snapshot and get the different and make the backups efficiently? If I only have to support VMware, I'm just happy just calling VMware, right? That's fine. But if I have to support both NetApp, VMware, and that will be a lot more work for me to adding support for them. So that is my answer for that, is that if I have to support multiple vendor, If they don't have a common way for me to make a differential snapshot, I will have to make the individual API call for them.
So another problem is if you had a common backup API, wouldn't the targets that you could back up to be fixed by the vendor, meaning they might support S3 or they might not in this mode? So how would you go about standardizing that? And backup vendors often have, well, in the case of data domain, they have their own backup appliance that stores and dedupes data and things, and I don't see how you would be able to support something like that.
I mean, what I imagine is something, you know, like how we have snapshot class, we may have a backup and backup classes, you know, and then through backup classes, you can specify different targets or, you know, things like that.
That's actually a good question. So whether we can, let's just say, back up from one vendor to the data protection. I mean, the data store, the backup storage belong to another vendor. How we can make it. That's a good question.
I see both use cases, Arlan. I see the case where you want to make API calls directly to control the data within the storage provider or other vendor. But I also, data path APIs are also very important because different vendors have different, you know, efficient systems for collecting backups and managing them. The data path part of it.
Yeah, I can definitely see, I mean, benefits to both approaches, but just being realistic, you know, like in the case of NetApp, like these APIs are proprietary, so you can't really, anyone cannot call them. That would include our own CSI driver, Trident. But I don't know about other vendors. Like, is everyone exposing these APIs to backup vendors, to the whole world, or just to a select backup vendors? Like, I want to be, like, if you're designing, I agree on this design, I want to know what percentage of vendors are actually willing to support this.
Cloud providers expose it, and you know, VMware exposes it. That certainly. But if you're proposing APIs that let us control the replication schemes in different storage vendors themselves, I think that also makes sense. But I think it's kind of a separate use case.
Right.
When we mount a volume on the pod, right? It just explode. It is exposed to us as a file system or as a block, right? Is that a common enough for the storage vendor to, like, should we base on that to answer the question whether,
you know, I guess, you know, yeah, what I'm proposing is more along with, you know, if a storage vendor already supports backup capabilities, then what I'm proposing is more suitable for that, you know. But if a storage vendor doesn't support backup capabilities, then we need this, you know, the type of integration that you were talking about. So I agree, you know, there are use cases for both, but I want to know, like, you know, so we talk about VMware supporting this, hyperscaler supporting this, but I want to know, like, you know, what other vendors are thinking about this. And if you have to make a compelling case internally for me, you know, I want to know, like, you know, what other vendors are doing already or what they're planning to do.
I think Fong put together some other APIs that expose this, right?
And there was another doc, a Google Doc.
Yeah.
Has a list. At that point we actually collected.
I
have that doc. You want me to show that doc? I have it.
Yeah, could you show me? I couldn't find it then right now. Yeah, I can stop sharing.
Okay, I think this one.
It might not be a complete list, and some the information might not be up to date, but that's what we found.
Yeah. So this VMware, and then okay. So this is basically Vivo, right? Adelan, so you see that NetApp actually also supports this. NetApp is actually, there's a Vivo. Okay, so all of this list here
So yeah, so
support
vVol
this.
is something different because vVol is not something we support through Kubernetes.
But see,
For
Vivo
CSI.
I'm not saying that
also-
there's
Vivo also-
I'm just
Vivo
saying that
also
it's possible for you to
CBT, right?
support those change blocks.
No, I know we do, but I'm
Mhm.
saying like this is done through proprietary APIs, so it's not something we expose to the whole world. Only select partners can access these APIs. So
And it's not blocks, it's files.
it's
right?
only files too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we
So
have
it's not-
diffing for
we have
NAS things.
exactly. We don't have diffing for blocks.
All right. So and AWS, Azure, RBD has something as well.
Those would probably all be change blocks, not change files.
Yeah, change block, because we are talking about this. We're right now focusing on blocks, right? We were actually not really, I think that's a non-go. Change file list is non-go because that's different, totally different. Is this the other APIs? Okay, so I think we listed here. There's a Google GCPD, and then there's a Dell EMC. I know they can support this.
Yeah, it's not a complete list because there are so many actually.
Yeah. So those are the list. Those are the things that we listed here. So this definitely, it's not just like one or two vendors can support this. I think that's all we have. We captured in the stock. So there should be more. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but basically, what other vendors are thinking about this. It will be like, I mean, it's one thing to support things through vVol, through proprietary APIs and integrations, but it's another thing to support things through open source drivers, or through CSI interface. And it would be painful if you go through this exercise and nobody really signs up for it.
Can anyone consume the vVol interface, or is at least the consumption side public? Could we like make a shim, for example, that would implement this interface we're proposing and then consume all these other storage providers?
But if you use vVol, then that's only in the vSphere environment, right? So
Yeah,
it's probably not enough.
I think definitely there's an interest in the community, because when we start talking about this CBT common interface back in like 1 year ago, many engineering firms, at least the people who have contacted me, including Microsoft, Google, and VMware, is interested in having a common interface for this differential snapshot. I can see some of them are in this meeting today, and also they are contributing into the design doc and so on and so forth. So there definitely be some interest in the community, but we do not have like an official commitment from specific vendors or anything yet. If that is something that you are after.
Sorry, so what was the question? Whether there is interest within the community to support this feature? Is that the question?
I think his concern was about more like if we have to do a lot of work to get this in common interface like this, is there enough vendor who are interested in such interface or to make it worthwhile, etc. That's what I understand.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, basically, like
Yeah.
the APIs that we have for diffing, these are proprietary APIs, and they're only accessible to certain partners, such as VMware. And I don't know about other vendors. Like for example, like in the case of file incremental backups, having a catalog makes sense because, for example, you want to restore individual files. In the case of blocks, I would imagine, I don't know. I mean, I don't understand like exactly how that backup catalog would be useful, but for CBT for blocks, which is the focus of this proposal, I would imagine the main benefit is really incremental backups, right?
Right. Right.
And for incremental backups, many vendors, they already have APIs that efficiently do that. You don't have to expose those change blocks to a third party. Like the backup APIs already just sends you copies of their dirty data, to the backup destination. So that's
Right.
why I'm questioning this.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, so in terms of from customers themselves, right? There is a lot of interest that we see from the different customers we are talking. But now, question is, can we standardize now? I mean, as goal of this working group, can we standardize it through the CSI, right? As a CSI driver providing this through a sidecar or something, providing this functionality. So for the backup vendors to consume it. So that was the goal.
Just want to have a time here. We have 10 minutes left on the meeting. So.
Yeah, as someone working on CSI drivers, I have sort of the opposite question, which is how many different backup vendors would be interested in using the interface? Clearly, we at Dell are going to support Dell's backup needs. And if it has to be proprietary, then so be it. But I think the question that, Fong and Sukarna are asking is, could we make it more open where the backup software could be more portable across different types of systems, and different customers could choose different backup software and have it work with their systems? I think it's a reasonable question.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, both backup vendors and storage vendors, they have to kind of agree on, what they're willing to do.
Yeah, so we can actually collect some more feedback.
Okay.
We already have some in that document. We already have different vendors participating and interested in that, but we can maybe get more. So we can actually maybe bring this up in the 6th storage meeting tomorrow, and just to ask vendors to chime in as well. But from this working group, because we have many backup vendors in this working group, right? Maybe you guys also want to chime in and see if you are interested. So let me actually talk to Shangqian offline and see how do we want to collect feedback. So we know that we have that document that has listed a few companies. Let me sync up with him first and then see what we want to do with this. But I think tomorrow I will bring this up in the 6th storage meeting.
If I can add one thing as a backup vendor, these type of APIs also enable us to overcome, say, network and topology challenges, which are imposed by, more innovative ways of deploying clusters, which might hide a lot of network access. So we're even in situations where we have all the vendor APIs, we can't use them because of the network challenges imposed by the topology. So interfaces like this, right? People who create those types of environments, it's kind of incumbent on them to provide such interfaces so as to enable, use of real software in those environments. So these interfaces would help a lot.
So you're saying that we have this common interface so that it's easier. You don't have to figure out how to get it to work. If there's any if vendors have some special advanced API that may not work.
Right.
Environment.
Right. I mean, case in point, right, is VMware's Tanzu S, right? The network topology will not allow access to the guest clusters, right? And it's hidden because of security.
That cannot be resolved by this. That's different.
Well, if you had the blocks.
That's different. That's really different.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
That's like a different cluster. When it is cluster deployment, it's not
right.
Not
if you had the differential blocks map, right, in the cluster, one could potentially get to the blocks, from a raw
No,
interface.
this is saying that this does not address that part. You still need to, well, I think we are off the topic. If you want to talk more about that, we can
Okay.
talk about that
All right.
offline. But
All right,
that's
we'll take it
different, I
offline.
think. Yeah.
But going by that analogy, right? So VMware, yeah, if VMware is the platform, there is a clear defined way to take snapshot, differential, CBT and all. So now if we come to Kubernetes as a platform, there is no way. So if we can as a community standardize that, and then vendors can support it, and I mean the storage vendors can support it, and backup vendors can consume it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Guy.
Yeah.
We only have 5 minutes left, so I want to summarize what we got so far, and then we might continue. We might have to continue the next time.
Yeah. Can you share your screen again?
Yeah. Actually, I haven't write down anything on the document for the cap yet, because I don't think this is a mature time to write a cap yet. What I want to got so far is that we are discuss about having like a front-end multiplex that able to for the client can talk to, and then that multiplexer can directing the traffic to the specific container or sidecar that actually serving the different source snapshot, right? We needing that piece. I think that is one piece that I think we agree on today, that we need that multiplexer that able to look up whether that volume have being mapped to what vendors, and if that vendor supports snapshot, different source snapshot or not. That multiplexer is needed, right? And another thing that we need information for is we need to talk to we need to get more information about the API extension server, so that we can see whether we can use we can serve that large requests of many thousand of metadata blocks without corrupting the Kubernetes API server. So that is something that we have to go back and discuss more and dig out more. And I also see a lot of question or some question related to whether we should have a common storage API, so that when this kind of thing available, this kind of different source snapshot API service is available, how we can leverage that in the common storage API. So that is something that I don't think we can answer immediately. I also see a group of questions related whether this API would be, this service would be an interest for different vendors. So I think Xing have mentioned that we need to go back and collect from more vendors to see if they're interested. So that is what I got on the notes so far. Do I miss anything?
I think that's it.
Okay, I would have to go back into this video and make a, I will walk through the list, make sure that I got everything. But it looked like, let me do some more research on this multiplex component, and I will try to propose something. I might have to talk to some of you in private, because I might not have all the expertise in this area. So I might need some of your guys' help on that. Okay.
Okay, yeah, can you, yeah, thanks, Fang. Can you stop sharing? Oh, you stopped. So I think, okay, so I actually added this one, right? So if you can, add your company's name who are interested in using this CBT API. I mean, I guess that's one way of collecting this. Yeah, so I'll put it in there, and I know I will. Okay, I believe Shang-Chen is interested. I'll just put.
Yeah, Dell EMC definitely as a backup vendor.
Is Ed, you're interested in that one as well, right? From Microsoft side? Is that here?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, I'll just add. Is John, I think Red Hat is interested, because you have been attending those meetings as well.
Red Hat's interested.
So who else? Please feel free to add your company name there. Cassidy interested? Tom?
We are, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, this is just like an interest. There's no commitment or anything.
Yeah. It's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. As long as we got enough support, we can make progress. Yeah. So okay, I think we're already at top of the hour. If other people are interested, please add your company name here. I will bring this up again in tomorrow's 6:30 meeting as well. All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that's all for today. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.